We'll start with a karakia timatanga. Tū taua mai I ruka, tū taua mai I raro, tū taua mai I waho. Kia tau I te Māori tū, te Māori ora ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. There is no public forum today, so we shall move on to the apologies. We've got an apology from councillors Bill Eklund, Marilla Fiso, Mr Matapore Allison and Councillor Houlihan for lateness due to traffic. So I will move that those apologies be accepted. Seconded, Councillor Gilbert. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Move on to confirmation of the agenda. Has anybody got any feedback about the agenda? Therefore, I will move that the committee confirms the agenda without addition or alteration. Seconded, Councillor Gilbert. All those in favour? Anyone against? I declare the motion is carried. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded of the need to stand aside from decision making when a conflict arises between their role as an elected representative and any private or other external interests they might have. Any changes or updates? No. Therefore, I move that the committee notes the proposed management plan for elected members' interests. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Gilbert. All those in favour say aye. Against? I declare that the motion is carried. Right. Confirming of the minutes. Has anybody got anything on the minutes? Nope. Therefore, I will move that the committee confirms the minutes of the Strategy Planning and Engagement Committee meeting held on the 19th of February 2025 as a correct record. Seconded, Councillor Gilbert. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? That is carried. Right, Part A, reports. The Strategy Planning and Engagement Committee Forward Work Programme on page 15. Mr Ward, do you have anything to say?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, just happy to take questions. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Mayor Raddock.
A couple of questions. First, about the reserve management. Where is it? Conservation consultation. How is that going? Oh. So can we have a more fulsome reply? You're on the committee.
With the leave of the chair, I can give an update on the one I'm chairing. So I'm chair of the Signal Hill. So that's in the process of being finalised based on both hearing feedback and recommendations from the panel. Is Councillor Wiley here? Nope, he's on the... Yep. Do you want to speak to yours, or are you happy for me to do it?
You keep going.
Yep. I sit on the Town Belt Management Plan chaired by Councillor Wiley. That's, I think, the first cab off the rank. So that's been hearing completed, finalised, and being stitched together by staff, which will come to Council or this committee, I suspect, for adoption when that's complete. And I'll now pass over to Councillor Gary, who will speak to the harbour plan, I imagine.
So the Otago Harbour Reserves Management Plan hearings occurred on Monday. We've yet to do a site visit and deliberate, and that will happen in the next little while, and then that will obviously come back to Council.
There are a couple of others that are obviously consultation is happening currently on the Mosgiel Memorial Reserve Management Plan, and finally the Town Belt, because Councillor Wiley, they've had their deliberations. So just looking for an update on those.
Councillor Walker just gave one. Sorry.
On the Town Belt?
Yes,
Well, you think that covers it?
I concur with everything he said about it.
So what will happen next from the deliberations?
Everything's proceed down, staff are just finishing it off, and we'll bring it to the next committee meeting for this committee.
Right. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lucas.
I was going to ask this question in the next item, but I think in light of the questions about the reserve management plan, I'm just asking about the Logan Park reserve management plan, because the commentary, and then there's more in the activity report, is that the consultation will consider the university year to ensure that to capture a wide audience. And so now that we are in the middle of the university year, I'm just wondering when those dates for consultation will be.
Unfortunately, Deputy Mayor, I don't have relevant staff available today to provide an answer, so I'd like to offer to come back to you on that one, if I may, please. Unless there's any councillors who are aware. Thank you for your previous responses, by the way.
Are there any other questions? Therefore, I will move that the committee notes the Strategy, Planning and Engagement Committee Forward Work Programme, seconded by Councillor Gilbert. Would anyone like to speak to the motion? I therefore put... Oh, well, cool.
Since the topic's been brought up, I just want to pay homage to all the staff that sit behind the reserve management plans, particularly in the context of heavy workloads. They've all been professional, exemplary, and I can't commend them more highly. So thank you to all the team. If that could be passed on, please.
Thank you. I will put the motion. Everybody in favour say aye. Against? Abstentions? I declare the motion is carried. Right, we shall move on to the activity report. Strategy, Planning and Engagement Committee activity report. We've got Mr David Ward, Ms Nicola Moran, Mr Scott McLean and other staff will speak to the report, and Mr Ward has said that there are some sickness and absence, so they will endeavour to do their best. Does anyone have any questions? Deputy Mayor Lucas.
Thank you. I'm just on page 31 about the future development strategy. I'm just, and it talks about the final implementation plan will be done after decisions are made on the 9-year plan. So, and jointly develop with the ORC. So I'm just trying to get my head around exactly, because obviously the ORC did the LTP last year. So how all that's going to fit together, and then when will that actually come, I guess, back to spec?
Kia Deputy Mayor. So Dunedin City Council and the Regional Council are working on the implementation plan, as we did in terms of co-authoring and co-creating the strategy. Staff are regularly working together on the content of the implementation plan and subsequently how is that delivered. But it is still a function of what surfaces through the 9-year plan process in terms of funding, what funding is available to breathe life into the aspirations of the strategy. So it is not chicken and egg, but it is very much linked between the conclusion of the consultation and locking in the 9-year plan budgets, and then it's the subsequent delivery of those projects identified in the
That's very helpful, thank you. And I guess with us delaying our long-term plan, that's effectively delayed the implementation plan. No, that's fine, thank you.
Councillor Gary.
While it's not mentioned in the papers, it is relevant to the Harbour Reserves Management Plan work. We had a presentation from ORC, and soon the Te Aka o Tākau, the joint piece of work, will come to council. I was interested if there's any staff member available who could tell me around the involvement. The piece of work seems to be being led by ORC, but it is a joint piece of work, and I just want to get a handle on how much involvement we've had, and any sort of news to date from our perspective.
I think Mr McLean may provide some insights.
Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor. So we've so you're right. ORC are leading the work; they're holding the pen, as it were. So we've been through the Parks Department really heavily involved, as have mana whenua. So it's I've seen the final document, which will be coming to council next week. So it's a really well worked up document. There are a number of high-level recommendations for each organisation and main entity, that players around the harbour, I guess, for those entities and organisations to consider. But it's a really great collaborative, joined up piece of work. So it sets out those sort of high level aspirations for the harbour, and involves taking a holistic and catchment wide view for the future.
So when they come to present to council, I'm assuming they'll be able to answer detailed questions around the consultation and the level of engagement, given there is so much out there.
My assumption is that they will be able to do that, and Miss Eaglesfield from the Parks Department, who has been involved from the DCC point of view, particularly heavily involved, she'll be able to answer some of the DCC-centric questions.
And finally, will the consultants be there?
I'll have to come back to you on that.
Are there any other questions? That said, I will just move the motion and move the resolution, sorry, and Councillor Gilbert was second, and just a quick thank you to all of the staff for all of the work in this activity report. It was especially pleasing, I think, to see the citywide climate resilience framework having to be shortly commenced, because that's very exciting, and I know that we moved that and put some money in the budget, in the draft budget for this work, but it's great to see that it's continuing on as all of the reserve management plan, and Mr Mayor brought that up as well, and there's a lot of work going on to get those plans on track and online. A lot of work also going on in the sustainability framework. We had a workshop on that just recently, in the second generation plan. We're working hard on the especially the heritage and multi-unit development plan change, and I think there's hearings on that in May. It was good to hear the answer to the future development strategy and the fact that that relies on the long-term plan and about lining those things up as well. Looking forward to some more work on the heritage action plan as well. And the strategic refresh, and then there's a lot of work there about zero carbon, which we're expecting to hear back for the long-term plan. So commend the staff for all of their work, and thank you. And I realise that there's a lot of people who are not with us, ill today or not with us. So thank you for being restraining questions, perhaps. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, sorry, since we're doing rounds of thanks today, it was remiss of me earlier not to thank the elected membership and team working on the reserve management plan. So thank you, Councillor Weatherall, Councillor Gary, Wiley, who's in the ether somewhere, and also to Juane Lansbury, who I think is sitting on many of these plans. His work has been invaluable. And and sorry, Kevin, and Kevin over there laughing uproariously. Easily missed, yeah, such a small man.
Moving right along. I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, abstentions, that is carried. Right, we shall move on to the Strategic Refresh Update Report, and Ms Nicola Moran and Ms Nadia Wesley-Smith will speak to the report. Okay. Kia ora koutou. Do you have any opening remarks? If you could introduce the staff, that would be good, because I don't have the names here.
Morena councillors. So I've just got the team with me who are the pen holders on the draft strategy. So we have Ms Alex de Blick, Ms Danielle Tolson, and Dr Rula Talatma. Kia ora. And nothing to add. We'll take questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions? Councillor Vandervis.
If we go to the bottom of page 36, it talks about the Strategic Framework Refresh Project. Will not something prior to 2025. Is there a missing word there? What does that actually mean, that sentence?
Yeah, correct. There is a missing word there. That is to be completed prior to end of 2025. So the missing words are being completed, will not be completed prior to June 2025.
Thank you for that. If we go to, bear with me. If we go to page 118, how Te Aotearoa relates to other strategies. It talks halfway through that about the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. Are these the principles that were produced by the Waitangi Tribunal in 1975?
I'll look into that. It's supposed not to be as such, because this might have been inherited from a previous text. We have now moved forward to our strategic framework, Maori strategic framework. So the reference should be to Te Taki Haruru in order to honour the Te Tiriti.
And just to add to that, that is about the Council's commitment to the Treaty of Waitangi.
My question was, the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi mentioned as something that needs to be embedded at an operational level. I would like to know what those principles are, if they are not the principles introduced by the Waitangi Tribunal in 1975. That's my earliest reference that I can find when I search the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi. They first came out in 1975 by the Waitangi Tribunal. They listed a number of them, the 3 Ps you'll be familiar with. Are these the principles that are referred to in this document?
I'm going to make a few assumptions in my answer to you, Councillor, and that Dr. Talutma referred to that might have been text that carried over from the previous strategy. So that strategy was created 2013. And so as this is a refresh of the drafts, we have some content that is still there from those old strategies. So that will be likely has been carried over and will be updated to reflect Council's commitment to the Treaty of Waitangi as demonstrated through Te Taki Haruru, the Māori Strategic Framework, which was adopted in September 2023.
So you can't tell me what the principles are that are referred to here?
Councillor Vandervis, I think that I will answer this, that during the last couple of years we have adopted Te Taki Haruru, which embeds the relationship with our mana whenua partners, and that's where this comes from. So I think the wording, I'm just trying to look through the old strategy just to see if the wording's been carried along, but the Te Taki Haruru does embed the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi and our relationship, the partnership, etc.
Yeah, I fully accept that. I just want to know which principles are being referred to. Are they the 3 Ps? Are they the ones that the Waitangi Tribunal came up with in 1975?
I think we'll have to get back to you on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, we'll look that one up.
If you go to the next line, it says that this framework, and again, I really want to know what that framework is, because when you're talking about principles, that's fundamental to your framework. It says that the framework aims to support the cultural, social, economic, environmental well-beings of Maori in Dunedin. All well and good, except that the new government has suggested, they have said that councils are no longer to involve themselves.
Point of order, please. 25(2)D, misrepresentation. That is not actually enacted yet. So that is, we still operate under the current law as it stands. That is, and the councillor knows this from previous conversations, Madam Chair.
I'll uphold the point of order as this the Treaty Principles Bill is still working its way through Parliament, so it hasn't been enacted. So we are working under the law and the agreements that we have now. And Te Taki Haruru, the framework was part of that we agreed to.
Okay, so just to clarify, the direction that has been given from the Minister of Local Government that we get back to basics and no longer indulge in the four well-beings, we're basically not taking that into account in this paper.
Well, we can't take any direction from any minister until it's enshrined in law.
Okay, thank you for the answer.
Does anyone else have any questions? Sorry, Mayor Reddick, I did have you on the list.
Yes, look, in terms of the various strategies, the 4 different strategies, the ones outlined in the paper, I'm looking for outcomes and measurement of the themes and goals. So they're all covered. The themes and goals are all covered. And obviously there's a lot of correlation with what's already in the existing strategies. But outcomes and measurement is what I'm wondering about. And so it does state that implementations, which is the outcome, the desired outcomes and how to get there, which is great, will be developed, and also that a monitoring framework will be developed. So my question is when?
Thank you for that question, Mayor Reddick. So I'm going to refer to the proposed engagement plan. For the purpose of the drafts coming to the committee today, we have been very specific about leaving out specific actions because that's something that we want to test with the community through the proposed workshops and survey. So in the engagement plan we've listed out a proposed approach to I have to get the thing up so I make sure I'm referring to it correctly. So there's 3 components to the workshop that we have been working with the facilitator on. So role of the strategy, including vision, have we captured it correctly? And then the bulk of the workshop will actually be centred around implementation and actions per strategic theme. So discussion on the development of indicators and measures. So this is about testing with the community about what they want to see, what activities they want to see or actions they want to see under those strategies. And then we'll be able to incorporate them into the strategic drafts and then wrap that monitoring framework. So this was one of the recommendations from the Harrison-Grierson report, was that we needed to do better at monitoring the strategies and making sure we're reporting back to community. So we're kind of taking the approach of a bottom-up community-led discussion on what actions do they want to see, and then we'll build them into the strategy documents.
Great, thank you. Now, that sounds very much in line with Council's general strategy. This Council's general strategy of interaction with the community, in other words, taking a bottom-up approach, similar to what is happening in, say, South Dunedin Futures, where we're discussing things extensively with the community and then developing implementation plans and then setting the monitoring framework, in other words, the measurement, in conjunction with them. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
So the next question is, when does the current, or the current or previous, whichever way you look at it, strategies, when do they actually expire? So we're on a sort of a deadline to have a new strategy ready upon the expiration of the others, and there are 4. So do they all have the same deadline? When do they expire? What is our deadline for this?
Thank you for that question. So the current 4, as we're talking about, sometimes we refer to them as the old ones, they have varying expiration dates. We have a couple who which have expired already, and some which are expiring next year. So each of the refresh strategies will all have the same 10-year lifespan, but they will be taken from the expiry of the current one. So the economic, as example, expired in 2023. So that will be 2025 to 2033.
Thank you.
I just have a question about the engagement, and I just wonder if councillors would like to add some groups to that. Would that be okay, and what would be the process?
We did anticipate that there might be some thought around a targeted audience, so I will be happy to gather those thoughts from you as we build out the details of those workshops.
So we could just email, because I was thinking about Dunedin Host, which is the tourism body which would be interested in environment and economics, so we could add them in. Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Councillor Gary.
Kia ora. Thank you for this major piece of work. I recall the launch of Te Aotearoa, which was the last strategy to be put together. And I was interested to hear reflections on, because we learned a great deal, did we not? As well, you weren't there then, but I think we learnt a lot as we went through the strategies, and that being the last one was probably quite refined in terms of the way we put it together. And it was certainly lauded by Mana Whenua, and I remember we launched it at Ōtākau Marae. My question is, when you were refreshing, did you find that was helpful? Was that more recent adoption of that? Because certainly a lot has happened in the meantime, but I just wondered if you noticed any difference as you went through the older ones as opposed to new ones.
I think I'd have to say that they're all quite individual, and as we've progressed through the refresh, you will find that we've borrowed bits and pieces, primarily taking inspiration from the structure of the economic development strategy. But to answer your question in detail, I'm probably going to have to refer to my colleague, Dr. Talatma.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Gary. Indeed, it is one of the most refined strategies, and there was a sense of partnership in the text and the writing of that document. So we hope that we can carry this spirit of the document as intended in the new version, so that hopefully shows in the writing. However, in the implementation, we have even a bigger opportunity to reflect that. So hopefully once we are attending to the details of implementation and monitoring, we can even put that aspirational text into action.
Well, thank you for that answer. And I've got a follow-up question, which is around the Aratoi strategy, because I remember I went to every single consultation on that, so I remember it really well, and that was very much, community input was very much a large part of that. But I note it was good to be reminded that it was considered by Creative New Zealand as the best strategy, cultural strategy, art strategy in New Zealand at the time. So any reflections on how that one has informed the refresh?
Yes, because of the level of community consultation at the time and the relationships that the Aratoi team and other DCC staff have maintained with those communities, it is still quite current. We've also looked at some other council strategies that have been developed since then. Most notably, Wellington City Council did a lot of work in 2021, and that the implementation of that strategy for their arts and culture programs has been very successful so far.
Thank you. Thank you for your answers.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair, and kia ora everyone. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Tarama. My question is related to this sticky subject of advisory groups, on which the papers are still working on. And I say this in the context of the work we're doing around the draft plans for the our reserves. We're still working on that. So what is the thought down the line, and I'm not thinking just of Aotearoa, but across the world, of just resourcing, motivating, maintaining, and I'm thinking previously as the chair of Te Aotearoa, how we get to a point where the advisory group doesn't feel it sits within, I guess, the context of a power imbalance. So, and that's a very complicated question. I know you've probably wrestled with this as a group. So just some thought around, will we go with what we've done before, or will we look to be a bit more contemporary in the way we try to get that feedback loop going with wider stakeholders?
Kia ora, Councillor, for that question. I have to confess, I don't think we've put as much thought into that that as part of implementation as yet, other than that's an action that we need to do once the strategies have been adopted. We will be using the same terms of reference templates that was adopted by Council last year, but I think just thinking on and reflecting on your question, I think the answer lies in the monitoring and evaluation, and what processes and systems do we need to put in place there to make sure that it's not only the advisory groups but the community feels heard and is able to provide feedback. And I just want to add also with a review process that we're building into these strategies is, which I've referenced in the report, is that the strategies will be reviewed on a regular basis. So that was also a bit of a gap that was identified in the Harrison-Gerson report. So strategies will be reviewed year one of a triennium so that we can get ahead of the long-term plan processes that take place in year two. So I think that's also another opportunity to make sure we're not leaving advisory group members behind. Does that answer your question?
Oh, sorry, cut you off slightly there. Yeah, that's a great answer. And just as a supplementary question, it's really encouraging, and particularly the part where you talked about not leaving the community on the side. So would you agree that there is a potential threat, and again I say this in the context of having chaired Te Aotearoa, that if we establish an advisory group, there's a perception within the public that everything's A-OK?
I'm probably reluctant to answer that. and my assurances is around the staff are doing what they can to build in a really robust monitoring framework. To kind of, if there has been perceptions in the past, we're not looking at that, but we're looking at the way forward, and to make sure that we're building in the ability to capture as many voices as we can.
And fully accepting, of course, that there's no perfect model ultimately. Yeah.
Councillor Gary.
And just to follow up on that answer, my impression from my own experience is that these different strategies, the communities that are interested in them and would be inputting are quite sometimes overlapping communities, but very specific in their response. And you mentioned the Aratoi strategy and how current it is, which was really, really interesting to hear. And I'm not at all surprised because the channel, had that really strong group of transforming Dunedin, and then that inputted into the Creative Dunedin Partnership. So that from the beginning of the formation of the strategy, there's been a really good channel of community input from the arts community. And so I'm assuming that, I'm just checking my reflection, that each of those has a very bespoke approach in terms of the communities that are interested in it. Am I correct in assuming that?
Again, we haven't put detailed thought into that part yet, as we've been focusing on getting some drafts to this stage, but there is definitely discussions that we'll need to have with the panel and with colleagues as we start to as we approach those next steps.
And I'm just thinking about this on the hoof as I've heard your answers, to be honest, and I have great confidence that you will. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Therefore, I would like to move that we note the content of the report, approve the draft strategies, thank you everyone, to progress to community engagement and approve the proposed plan for community engagement, seconded by Councillor Lucas. Thank you, and I'll take speakers after I've said my bit, because I can't do two things at once. Thank you. This has been an over the 4-year project since 2020, when the famous Harrison-Gerson evaluation report was presented to Council. In a perfect world, this would have finished in the original timeline of December 2022, with implementation from January 2023, but we live in an imperfect world. Amongst the soup we've been trying to swim with this project have been the COVID lockdowns, council elections and focus changes, government elections and focus changes, as Councillor Vandervis mentioned earlier, changing the LTP from 2024 to 2025, the zero carbon work, a number of plans, and it seems a tsunami of reforms. So thank you to the staff, because I know that people will be feeling somewhat exhausted with all of the work. We've had a truckload of reports from 2020, which I've spent the last couple of days reviewing, and my own summary document runs to well over 100 pages because there has been so much work on this. And I agree with the suggested way forward, which is to reconnect with our communities and hear what they have to say. It's been brought up in questions that a lot of these strategies started with groups like Transforming Dunedin, who put a lot of work in, and I know Tautoro was like that as well. So we need to focus on what we're trying to achieve with these strategies, which is that strategy suite, which, as Mr Mayor mentioned, focuses on action and outcomes for our communities to make our city a leader in caring for our communities and our 4 key well-beings. I put it simply: health, wealth, culture and nature. These are the 4 strategies in front of us today, which staff endeavoured to deliver to 60 to 70% completeness, and that 30% or 40% is actually to get the community on board and to see what actions they have. The Grierson review pointed out, and Council agreed, that the issues with our strategic framework, and my summary is a bit gappy. The strategies had no formal oversight, they didn't align. IKA took the same language. Sustainability and the Treaty of Waitangi weren't defined, and they were inconsistent in their doing stuff, prioritising, implementing, measuring and reporting. So it was great to hear the answers to the questions we asked earlier. We also needed to update the strategies to reflect the 2020 realities. These strategies were written in their teenage years, I guess we'll call it. The world's changed a lot, and we've changed a lot since the strategies are written. So the actions and plans definitely need to be updated and prioritised. Staff have worked their best in challenging times, and there's been some key achievements along this pathway. The Māori Strategic Framework, which we adopted in 2023, the levels of service, which don't sort of sit in this report, but they're actually a really important part of this whole strategic work, and the work on the Sustainable Development Goals and the alignment with the strategy template as presented today. The strategy leads have met with the strategy partnerships, and councillors have attended a number of strategy workshops, and it's been, as we all know, a challenging process because we had a lot of other stuff to juggle, both for staff and for councillors. My involvement has been with the environment strategy, which I'm chair of, so I'm pleased to see that that's looking close to completion. In my opinion, that strategy had excellent bones, and it closely mirrored, because it was, I guess, the last strategy, closely mirrored the and talked to especially the economic development strategy. It just needed the treaty plus sustainability added in, the situation analysis updated, and then we need to agree with our community on the actions, the priorities and the implementation. And I think I mentioned earlier that it was pleasing to see the climate adaptation plan, which was one of the actions into Aotearoa. Actually, something's happening with that, so it's fantastic. So I do believe that we missed a vital step, which was the community engagements on the strategies, and I feel we should have started that a bit earlier. That's always a challenge. It was in the program, however we are, amongst other things, we're challenged by that. So these draft strategies and passing the resolution today gives us the opportunity to engage with our communities. It's way past time that we connect with our people and get their input into the city's future. The original strategic suite started off in 2011 with the town hall meeting and a whole of city engagement, and that would be my dream to do again. But we've got a lot of time and resource pressure, so the workshop and the surveys have been offered as a useful method to get this work done. I observed and took part in the events and festivals workshops last year, which led to that recently adopted plan, and I think that was a great method of digging down into what matters most to people. So that's the way forward for us too. I know we've talked a little bit recently, yesterday, the day before, about consultation fatigue, but I think that this is a good methodology which isn't onerous and targets those partnership groups. What matters to me most is action on the strategies, to get them fit for purpose and full of actions that we can commit to to make our city the best place to live in New Zealand. We were top of the poll in the results from the Quality of Life survey, and we need to make our city the absolute best that we can, and those strategies will lead us down the pathway and also engage with the long-term plan so we can get action. So this is our chance to be getting that work aligned, and I realise that there is pressure on staff, and I say thank you for the work you've done. Would anyone else like to speak? I saw Mr Mayor had his hand up, and then Councillor Hurleyhan.
Yes, I've got a few things to say, and I suppose it starts with the top of the polls. We are top of the polls in the Quality of Life survey, and something else that we have accolades for in the Residents' Opinion survey is the fact that we are listening to the public of Dunedin there. So the residents and ratepayers are having an influence on the things that happen within council, and so that has been acknowledged. And I'm going to refer everything to the Economic Development Strategy because that is a particular strategy where we've come under a bit of criticism recently, and I think it is vital for the future of Dunedin that we pick up our game in terms of economic development. And I think we've made good progress in various of the other strategies, but one of the things that characterised the Economic Development Strategy was it did have some clear measurements. So as we discussed in recent days, we didn't hit those clear measurements. Now, at least we're prepared to discuss that and see where, look to where the issues are. And now we're in the phase of figuring out what are going to be the next set of outcomes that we desire, the implementations to achieve them, and the measurement, the monitoring framework for those things. That's fantastic. And one of the things that we are taking into account, and Council has voted to include Te Ao Māori in everything it does, and has developed Te Taki Hararu. And this is quite a significant strategy as it feeds into all of the work that Council does. And I'd like to just draw a few connections between that strategy and the Economic Development Strategy. Because the first principle within Te Taki Hararu is mana, and that is the recognition of mana whenua in Ōtepoti, but also the leadership, influence and partnership that we have with everyone in the city. And so this is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about consultation with everyone to help develop our strategies, when we talk to the leaders of businesses in this town. And one of the strongest businesses that exists in the South Island of New Zealand is Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu. So Ngāi Tahu, in my observation, negotiated the best treaty settlement and has become the strongest force in Māoridom. And so they absolutely work under the principles of Te Ao Māori, and we are incorporating 4 Te Ao Māori principles into the way we do things at the council. And so there is good synergy, and what we can see from Ngāi Tahu is that it's a successful strategy. So mana, recognising that leadership comes from everywhere, that people can influence what we do, and that we partnership with the community, with Ngāi Tahu, with the local runaka, with everyone in Ōtepoti Dunedin. Now, next is Māori, which is the life force of all things, and it's all about how we interact with our environment, with each other. It's about the social and cultural and other, well-beings in the city, which other elements that we have strategy for. So it's the fact that everything is connected and everything works in together. Next is tapu and noa, which is about what is right and what is wrong. And, it's essentially a system of morality, but it's a system of guiding principles to ensure that we do the right things. It's not just doing things, but doing the right things. And we work through those things with mana whenua, with ourselves, and with the community. And we have a range of people. Very often we start our meetings with religious groups coming along, and they have a range of religions that will speak and launch our meetings. But the core guiding principles that they all have are unified in determining what is right and what is wrong. And lastly is whakapapa, and that is about those who have gone before, about the families. And one of the things that is happening, for instance, in the South Dunedin Futures consultations and discussions is talking with the people, all of the people who have a knowledge of, for instance, the drainage system in the city and how that works and how that might work in future, and talking with all of the experts involved. So that's what whakapapa is all about, making sure that everybody, including mana whenua, is recognised through partnerships, and everybody can speak to what is required and we get the right outcome. So I do believe strongly in having te ao Māori incorporated into what we do, and Te Taki Haru embodies that. And I just wanted to give a quick rundown of those 4 principles with the relevance to our economic development strategy. And one of the influences of our economic development strategy and partnership, that we've done a range of things in this city which are based on money
Mr.
change.
Mary, we just about finished.
It stands us in good stead to have that.
Thank you. Councillor Hurley.
Wait, am I working? Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, well, I've been involved in this process from the start, and I joined this group because I was desperate to get the Aratoi Advisory Group restarted. At the beginning of my term, the Creative Dunedin Partnerships had been stopped by, it is an operational matter, nothing to do with me, but so I tried to restart it, and I did have one meeting with the people in that advisory group, and they were enthusiastic, they were keen as anything to be involved, and I want to thank them for coming along, and I want them to know today, if they're watching this, that I think of them often, and I have asked numerous times for them to be involved in this process. Their time has now come. I would have liked them to have been involved way earlier than this, because I know they've told us that originally the history is they came to us first, asking to be involved and asking to have a say in the Aratoi, the arts and culture strategy of our city. And so I am delighted that that time has finally come. I have to say I'm frustrated it's taken this long for us to involve the community in this process. And the whole process has been, it's fair to say, very frustrating for most people involved. I want to thank the staff that have been involved. Some of them have really had been through quite a lot with this process, and I'd like to thank particularly Mrs. Morand, Gina and Nadia, and I'd also like to personally thank Lisa Wilkie and Daniel Tolson, who have worked a lot on the Aratoi strategy, and I'm very grateful for that. I am delighted that, well, not delighted because the things that are in here aren't, are a bit sober, but I'm very pleased they're here, they're relevant. This strategy is now a living document, and it's up to date with some of the things, but it will change as things come along. And the things that are in the Aratoi strategy that I'm pleased are acknowledged is that COVID has come since the last strategy, and I know Councillor Gary is correct in acknowledging the last strategy was, renowned for being a very good strategy. However, times were really different then, and this is a different time. It's a different strategy. I'm not saying it's not going to be as good. Hopefully it will be, but the needs of our community are now very different. COVID hit the arts community particularly hard, and the result of that is still lingering with many groups. So that's been acknowledged, and I really appreciate that, that it has been acknowledged in the strategy. The closing of the Fortune Theatre has also created a gap for theatre professionals in our city, and of course the fact that we haven't resolved to move forward with a professional theatre yet in our city, despite the money being funds was available for it, and now they're not available at present. So all of those things have an impact on our community, and of course the mention of the music action plan, and that is mentioned in the strategy as well. There is an incorporation of I'd say quite an enthusiastic, quite a lot of the Taki Hararu culture and influence has appeared in the strategy, which surprised me a little bit how much there was there, but they've been very enthusiastic on their involvement, and probably rightfully so in a way, because it does reflect there are a lot of Māori and Pacific Island people who are involved in performance arts, so which is great. What I would say in closing is thank you to everyone. We've got this far. Now it's up to the people, the communities, to please have your say, come forward, do your bit, as the saying goes, and it's a good one. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It is the people, the people, the people.
Councillor Mayhem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try not to repeat what anybody else has said, but the strategies are really important to me. I campaigned on the wellbeings. It's been a really difficult time in the world with COVID, a cost of living crisis, and the current climate set by our government. Global issues, very, very challenging times. So it's the relationships, the community and the people of our city that is central to these wellbeing strategies, and the creation of an inclusive, accessible and welcoming city for all of our residents and businesses to thrive is the reason that I'm sitting here at this table. So measurements for me will include the quality of life survey and the residents' opinion survey, and there's always room for improvement. They've been mentioned already, but I'm happy to see really little things. An example is, say, the civil defence and emergency management has expanded into goals when previously they were priorities. This will add resilience to all of our communities and enable for a thriving village, as Mr Mayor went into detail about the Te Taki Hararu principles that are embedded in here. This is fantastic. Ōtepoti is a wonderful place, and these strategies offer opportunity for equality, diversity and inclusiveness. These are all key social indicators. There is a problem though. There's inequality across New Zealand, and persistent and entrenched inequality affecting some of our population. Children and young people, older people, mana whenua, our multi-ethnic communities, new migrants, former refugees, people with disabilities and people on lower incomes. We need to celebrate and value every one of our community members, and these strategies prioritise these. I love all of the themes and the goals within them. I commend the staff on the incredible amount of work that's gone into this refresh and the research into, much wider principles that have been incorporated. And these are really fulsome strategies. Even though it's a draft, I can't wait to see the response from our community in consultation. I'm proud to be part of so many different advisory groups on the council, the Disability Issues Advisory Group, the Refugee Steering Committee, the Social Wellbeing Advisory Group and the newly formed Music Advisory Panel. Because as most of you will have heard me say, the arts is what makes us human, and I think really what makes a sense of belonging and well-being in this city is reflected in the enriched cultural and events that happen, and I commend the team on all of the wonderful things that we do provide for our residents, and I just want to see the city go from strength to strength. So again, thank you to the staff for all of your mahi. Kia ora.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm probably one of the few people around this table who've been here for most of the whole journey. I don't know that I've been here for the whole journey of the strategies, but most of it. And I recall going back to when this process began, that I think it was in the order of 42 strategies that Council had, which some number around that. And those were in the process of the strategies we have and we were working with to do this refresh down to 8. So while the strategic framework may not now be as current, and I'll come to that in a moment, it was best practice at the time and a whole lot of an improvement on the many, many strategies that we had. And what I noticed through that process was the community consultation, the community engagement, because this was something relatively new, I would suggest, but also as the strategies proceeded, they became better. And they were all finalised at different times. So one of the issues with that is they didn't all speak to one another, and they weren't all the same. They were bespoke. So that's one observation I'd make. And part of the reason I saw for a refresh was that we use different language now. And a hearings panel that I chaired recently, I was very aware the document we were using from 2006 to the document we're looking at now, the language is different, and it's different around biodiversity, and it's different around climate change, and it's different around the treaty. And so this is a welcomed refresh. And of course the wellbeings came into place during that time. So those are all important, but the relationships with the community have been really important in this process. So if I think about the Aratoi strategy, because I was involved, as I said, and I went to every consultation as a member of the community, and I also then chaired the Creative Dunedin Partnership. And that was a particularly interesting process to see that channel of communication, the work of staff, and the current. I was very interested to hear staff talk about how that particular strategy is quite current. But of course it still needed refreshing because, as Councillor Houlihan said, things have changed, and COVID is no small part of that. If I think about the economic development strategy, there were clear measurements, that's true, and we were on a trajectory to achieve those, but then COVID hit, and that in a large part changed the outcomes. But they were always aspirational goals, and I think there was a surprise. I recall Councillor Staines talking about, that there was a bit of surprise that we got so close to achieving them, to be honest, because they were aspirational. And it's important that we are aspirational. But we also, as a council, at various times have said they were no longer appropriate because the 4 wellbeings came into place in the meantime. And achievement is more than money. Achievement is more than how much people earn. And if we've achieved, it's more than GDP. GDP is a very narrow tool. So I would just remind people of that. And in response to Mr. Mayor's comments, it just reminded me that there are some aspects of government policy and settings, for example, immigration settings, that determine how successful we are in attracting new talent and how businesses are achieving their goals. And so that's just one element. If I go on to Te Aotearoa, I do remember that very moving launch at Otako Marae and the pride and the engagement in that particular strategy. And of course the social wellbeing strategy, never has there been a more important one. So I welcome this, but it does depend on council vision. It also depends on councillors staying in their lane and allowing staff to do their job, which they do very well, and knowing what is governance and what is management, what is governance and what is operational. And what I would say to staff is applaud you for the work you've done on this, for your expertise, for the way you've used your expertise to produce these documents. I haven't been involved in them, apart from as a councillor in the round, and for your patience, forbearance and commitment to this work. It's important, Mahi. I would.
Excuse me, Councillor Gary, your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I just finished to say the consultation will be challenging in these times. Thank you.
Councillor Vandervis.
Previous Minister for Local Government, Mr Simeon Brown, has indicated that councils need to get back to basics and away from the four well-beings. I agree. In my view, local government four well-beings have become an unaffordable, party-politicised diversion away from providing basic city services. This agenda, in my view, is yet another 100 pages of undefined, based on undefined principles, 100 pages that is irrelevant to providing the city services that we should be focused on. The reason that I've tried to find what the principles were is because if we can define the principles that we're talking about, then we can have some real debate. In the absence of that, and in 100 pages which very, very few people in Dunedin will take the time to read, I don't believe that this has been a useful that it's been useful use of staff time. I don't believe that as an update that it will actually make any real difference to anything, and that it is just yet another 100 pages on top of the hundreds of pages that we've already had in these strategic refreshes that the current government will hopefully succeed in diverting us away from and back to providing basic city services. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lucas.
Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge the staff as well, and acknowledge that it hasn't been it's been long and not necessarily a particularly easy path to getting here, and I acknowledge the journey that we've all been on, and that it hasn't been easy, and I guess what we've got is not perfect and is not complete, and I think that's how it should be if we're going out to the community to consult, because we actually want to hear from our community. We shouldn't be delivering them a finished product. We need to hear from them, and as you said, Councillor Barker, and rightly so, ideally we would have been out to talk to our community earlier, and we need to get their input and to get their views on what our clear strategy and direction, and definitely our implementation plan needs to be. I had the privilege last night to attending the welcome function for the University of Otago new Arts Fellows, and as I sat and listened to the Acting Vice-Chancellor and each of the Fellows, I realised how absolutely interconnected all our strategies are, and not just, as you would imagine, just the cultural one last night. And as they each talked about, and I'll use the example of the Carolyn Plummer Dance Fellow, who is already going to be part of the Wild Dunedin Festival, and is already into, if you listen to her speak, it's not just, you know, the cultural strategy she's talking about, where she's talking about her environment strategy and everything else. And I just think, and talked about how welcoming the city is, and one of the fellows who said, I can see I'm going to move here permanently. I mean, already he's only been here since January, and I just think, you know, we don't realise actually how interconnected our strategies are until sometimes we get out of this room and we get out and into a community and hear what has to be said, and value everything that we do. I think fits within these strategies, whether it be our Three Waters work, our transport work. I mean, they're all interconnected, and in that instance I actually have to disagree with my colleague, is that I think at the end of the day we should be using these strategies to determine exactly where we're spending our money and the work that we're undertaking. And I think it's yes, we've still got work to do, and I'm looking forward to consultation because I think that's key, and to polish these strategies and add the extra 30 to 40% that needs to be done, and as I said, thank you very much to the team for your forbearance in getting to this point. So thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? I shall just exercise my right of play. Waiting for the time. Oh, sorry, I missed it, Andrew. I can't see your hand up.
Yeah, no, it's up there somewhere. Sorry, I'm just driving, but I'm hands-free at the moment. But I just want to comment on the fact that in reading the papers, I was quite surprised when I read the economic development strategy that was drafted in there. And it is very much a draft because there's a lot of information that I was surprised was left off from what's been already consulted on. But the key thing I want to talk about is the fact that actually these are the community strategies, they're the city strategies, they're not going to be owned by the council. And if I go back to the economic development strategy for 2013, prior to that, it was the business leaders and the community that came together that actually formulated what that economic development strategy looked like. That worked with council staff and councillors, and that was what was presented. We have to maintain that same pathway and ensure that all our community groups can come through that process. At times I feel like we have got lost in policy and strategy and trying to mould these strategic plans and strategies of where we should be going with them. The community need to be fully engaged. They need to have a full stake in this. And actually it needs to reflect what the community wants, not what council wants. And that is something I'm going to be very passionate about. I'm very frustrated we're still working through a refresh, not a rewrite. All of it is a refresh of the economic development strategy, and I think that should have been delivered already. And I'll be working extremely hard in the next few months to get that done. But when I look at what's been put on paper today in relation to the economic development strategy, I am extremely frustrated. And I can hear that in a lot of councillors' voices as they've gone around the table. But the other thing I do actually appreciate, that's a good document because I can tell you that the people in the economic development area and the businesses and the community are going to enjoy getting stuck into it and go, actually, this is what we need to upgrade, this is what we need to improve on, and actually these are the pieces we need to really chase and challenge the community on. And we need all our big stakeholders involved, and I've heard that around the table. Councillor Houlihan was very articulate in that area. So I'll support this, but there is some major frustration in my voice. Thank you.
Councillor Gowert.
I think it's odd to say this at this point, but I wasn't going to speak, but after listening to Councillor Wiley, I think I will. I say this very cautiously, being an arm's reach of the head of our Three Waters department, but we are not solely a utilities company. Sorry, we're not. Whilst that is a large part, yes, of what we do, we are the city's council. We are to look after the needs and other aspects of all of our community, not just those who may have voted us on, not just a segment that we're particularly fond of, all of the community and all of the needs. And further to what Councillor Wiley was saying, that's kind of the point we need to hear from the community. Deputy Mayor Lucas said that we can't go out with, I can't remember whether you said a done deal or a fait accompli, either way I translated it. We need to go out with a foundation, and that's what this is. Yes, again, it would have been great to have gone out earlier. We didn't, we haven't, we are where we are, so it's good to go out now. And we do need community input so that we can build on all those other aspects of what makes a city council function for the best of the city, not just water in, water out. Sorry, Mr. Ward again. Not just water in, water out, but all the other elements that make our city a wonderful place to live.
No one else. So there's a lot to summarise here, and I think I'll just start with what Mr. Mayor said about Te Take Haruru, and that was one of the key points of the strategic refresh, was to embed the Treaty of Waitangi partnership in the strategic framework. And I think there's been some excellent work done on Te Take Haruru, and I really like what you said about the guiding principles, and went through them all. I thought it was really useful for us to think about as we move forward. And especially, I think you said leadership comes from everywhere, and I think when we're talking about going out and talking to our communities, that we will see that leadership come in, and the opportunity for them to input into as someone very Andrew said it, they are the community strategies. So we'll be looking forward to that consultation there, and also mentioned the influence of Turunanga o Ngāi Tahu and our partnerships with them, and they have been partners in a lot of our strategic strategies as well. Councillor Hurley talked about the importance of the advisory groups, and I think we sweated a bit about this, about it was the chicken and the egg, which came first, the strategy or the advisory groups. The advisory groups were pulled in during the process to give feedback on the strategies as they were, and then we thought, if we're going to have new-ish strategies or refresh strategies, then how do we have appropriate advisory groups? So some of the work that we've done through the years, when we put the template in place for having advisory groups, will be very helpful for that. And I did hear some sense of frustration through some of the speakers about the process, and I think I talked about that at the start of the speeches about this as well, as this has been long. We've had who can forget COVID? We've had that in the middle, elections, and a whole lot of other work, but we have kept on working on this. Councillor Mayhem, I think one of the key things that you hit on is the relationships essential to strategies and the thriving village, which carries through that theme of Te Take Haruru. And I think going back to the relationships, I think we've talked about the R word and the C word, communication and relationships. And I think this gives us the opportunity to go out and talk to people. And I did get my highlighter out, and I put that if councillors can share the groups that they want to be part of the engagement, because Councillor Mayhem, you listed a lot of groups, and what we need to do is make sure that those groups are in the appendix at the end and they are consulted during this process. And Councillor Gary gave useful about how we used to have 42 strategies and now we have 8. So imagine doing a strategic refresh on 42, and then also about how languages and relationships have changed over the intervening years, so things transform as they do. Also mentioning about clear vision, and then the aspirational goals as well that we need to put in those. Councillor Vandervis talked about back to basics, and there is some movement amongst some government ministers to make some changes, but until those changes are done, we will proceed with what we have got under legislation and what this council is committed to, because I think everyone that is voted here around the table is voted to do their best for the city, and the best for the city is to have that vision and that strategy and those actions, and then budget for them and get them done. Deputy Mayor Lucas certainly talked about the pathway to get here, and I totally agree. It shouldn't be perfect and complete before it goes out, because that's the whole point of consultation, is that it would be remiss of us to go out with something that we thought was 100%, because the beauty is in getting everybody's work done, input into this. And you also talked about the interconnectedness of strategies, and I really appreciated your observations, and I think we all feel that when we go out into our community, that we think, oh yes, this connects with that and connects with the next thing. And when we look at the people that are being consulted around the strategies, you can also see there's a lot of groups right across them. We did talk at one stage about having just one strategy, but I think that the 4 strategies are useful for people to focus on. Councillor Wiley talked about that they, did I mention that? The community strategies are not owned by council, and yes, I did sense some frustration there, but I'm sure that tomorrow we have a meeting with Business South, and I'm sure they'll help us get on that pathway. Thank you, Councillor Gilbert, for talking about the that it's not just utilities, that our responsibility is to the whole of the city and to look after the needs of all of our communities, and it isn't just about turning on the tap and having water coming out, but it's also making sure that we have safe, healthy, wealthy, environmental friendly communities to live in. So we do keep topping that poll as the best place to live in New Zealand. So I look at that perfect timing. I shall put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Anyone against?
No. Recorded, please.
Abstentions? That is carried. Items for consideration by the chair. Did anything come up that people... Thank you, team. Did any... Councillor Vandervis? Oh, sorry, not Councillor. Sorry, Councillor Benson.
Thank you very much. On the minutes that were approved of the previous meeting, you'll see the text of my request for an update from the Zero Carbon Plan Advisory Panel. I just wondered what progress had been made on that and when we would expect that report.
Can I just hand over to Mr. McLean? We discussed that yesterday.
Yeah, I'll come back to you on the progress. It's definitely something that's now come on our work program. So we're working through it. So it'll come back shortly. We're scheduling another meeting of the advisory panel shortly. So probably wait till after that and then update this committee.
Councillor O'Malley.
I was wondering, is this the request where the councillor couldn't identify actually the accusations he made against the advisory committee and couldn't identify where on the report the actual mistakes were? Is this the report we're asking on? Oh, evidently it is. Thank you. Thank you.
I shall close with a karakia whakamutanga. Unahia, unahia ki te uru tapanui, kia wātia kia mama, te kako, te tinana te wairoa I te ara takatu, koia rairoko whakairea, aki ki ruka ki tina, huie, taike. And I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.